You're watching KCRT Television. Well, we are now in session. I want to apologize to everyone for the delay. We're having technical difficulties. Hopefully, we'll be able to get everything together so that we can proceed on time. So we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bonner,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jimenez,
Presente.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Here.
Councilmember Robinson,
Here.
Councilmember Willis,
Here.
Councilmember Zepeda,
Here.
and Mayor Martinez.
Here. Next item.
Our next item is statement of conflict of interest. Are there any? Hearing none. Next item is agenda review, and we do have a correction to the proposed resolution in section 2. And it should read, for the foregoing reasons, the City Council hereby rescinds resolution number 63-24. Right now it says 63-34. Okay. Right, under new business, our one and only item is to adopt a resolution rescinding resolution number 63-24, which would remove from the November 5th, 2024 ballot a proposed business license tax on oil refining and adopt a resolution approving a settlement agreement with Chevron Corporation.
So have we been able to make connection?
I don't think City Attorney Dave Alshire has been able to get on. I think I'm going to pass the framing of this to our outside counsel, Michael Colantuno, who's on currently. With that, Michael?
Can we also try to get the city attorney on the phone, if it's possible? Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go.
Sure. So as the community knows and as the council knows, the council placed a measure on the ballot to impose a refining tax in the city of $1 per barrel of refined product. Chevron has objected to that tax, and a nonprofit organization that appears aligned with Chevron has filed a lawsuit to challenge the form of question that the council chose to place the measure on the ballot. The deadline to remove that measure from the ballot is today at 5 o'clock. We have to have a letter in the registrar's hands by 5 o'clock today if we're going to do that. Otherwise, it's too late and the election will go forward. Over the last effectively a week, we've engaged in negotiations with Chevron, by which they have promised to pay $50 million a year for 5 years, followed by $60 million a year for 5 years, in exchange for the city's agreement to take this measure off the ballot. It is in some ways an extension or an update or a replacement for a 10-year agreement the city had that arose from a similar taxation dispute. That agreement expires the middle of next year. This new agreement would provide substantial funding to the city to provide services in the interim. The city attorney's office has recommended approval of this agreement because it will eliminate the pending lawsuits, prevent future lawsuits, and allow the city certainty that this money will come in and can be spent in a way that cannot be achieved otherwise, because passing the ballot measure would certainly lead to litigation. The city of Carson passed a somewhat similar measure, although I think this measure learned some of Carson's lessons. In 2017, they've been litigating ever since. They've been spending about $1 million a year on legal fees, and they found it necessary to escrow the tax proceeds because they might have to pay them back. And so because this is a bird in the hand worth nearly as much as the bird in the bush, it is the city attorney's office's recommendation that the council approve the settlement. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions there might be.
Do we have any questions from council? If not, I believe we can turn the mic over to public comments. So the floor is open for public comments.
Okay. We have 13 in-person speakers. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes to address the council. If there are any, is there anyone that's joining us online? If you would like to address the council on this issue, please raise your hand at this time. First group of speakers, Mark Wasberg, Andrea Zuniga, John Joya, Brian Herbinger, Raleigh Butler, Connie Choi, and Sue Wilson. Please come forward. Mark Wasberg.
This tax ain't nothing but a pet peeve program for the city of Richmond to make Richmond a welfare city. They want to pay for all this homeless garbage. They want to start new homeless encampments. It's all about hate against Chevron. Time and time again, the city council wanted to close down Chevron with all this pollutants. That's just a bunch of pack of effing lies, and you know it. Look how clear the sky is. I don't see no pollution out there. You guys are just a bunch of idiots out there who wants to destroy Chevron and a bunch of good paying jobs. Oh, by the way, who was out there supporting Chevron for a raise? And then he turns around and stabs Chevron in the back? Yeah, that's your mayor. Aguado was out there protesting for Chevron. Then he joined the RPA and he stabbed Chevron right in the back. That's all they want to do, make Richmond a welfare city to pay for that stupid green deal that they're doing. They don't care about good paying jobs. They want to close Chevron down. They want to close all the big businesses down. Then they got another tax, Measure U, so actually they are taxing the hell out of Chevron. This is how stupid the whole thing is, and the only way you're going to stop this is get these people out of office. You can't not let these people get back in the office. You got 2 clowns running for office here in Richmond, and I'm on the ballot, and I'm going to tell you something, you son of a bitch. You're going to have a problem here, because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to bring your ass on the internet, because we're going to have a debate. See, this guy don't want to hear the truth. He want to cut people down. He ain't nothing but a fucking anarchist. That's all he is. He doesn't care about good paying jobs. But like I say, the only ways in which you're going to get rid of these people, you cannot vote for these people, okay?
Enough.
Hey.
Enough.
Hey, I got the freedom of speech.
No, you don't.
The hell I don't.
Go.
The hell is wrong with you?
Let's
You
go.
see what I'm saying? Don't vote for these people, people. Don't vote for them.
You were fine until you started politicking.
Let's go. Enough.
You violated my freedom of speech. Even your police chief ain't nothing but a criminal. Just was restraining order on him. See, people, you're destroying my freedom of speech. My freedom.
Andrea Zuniga. Be quiet.
Hi, I'm Andrea Zuniga.
Andrea, speak in the mic.
I'm running for city council, and we're going to destroy the RPA, and we're going to destroy Willis and other idiots.
Hi, I'm Andrea with Polluters Pay Campaign and CBE Action. We're here to say that any benefits from this $550 million is a direct result of residents, families, and youth organizing for a just transition today and tomorrow. Our measure isn't going to the ballot, but this makes it all more important that this council commit to ensuring that when the refinery leaves, working families aren't left with the cleanup cost. Richmond deserves clean air, water, and for our families to grow up without asthma, cancer, and fear of next refinery disaster. At the next council meeting, the council must commit to investing in a just transition for Richmond. We are only here today because our community organizations, families, and workers brought the Polluters Pay measure to the city. And no matter what happens today, we will continue to organize for environmental justice here in Richmond with more community wins to come. This is our work. Our community deserved to vote on this measure to shape our city's future. We're disappointed that residents will not have the chance to cast their ballots, but we're clear. The working families who live next to the refinery pollution have forced Chevron's hand. This is our organizing. Our ongoing campaign numbers show that overwhelming community support for the measure. We know we would have won in November. We need a commitment from the city to start to prepare today for refinery transition and cleanup, because we know that what happens when corporations declare bankruptcy and walk away from their toxic mess. We've seen it in other cities, and here in Richmond, we don't want it to happen again. If the council approves the tax deal, the city council must establish a community oversight board to allocate the funds and reserve the use of funds to advance a just transition for Richmond. Thank you.
John Joya.
Good afternoon, I'm John Joy. I live in Richmond, and I'm proud to represent Richmond on the County Board of Supervisors. We are here today because of strong leadership in the community. Organizations like Asian Pacific Environmental Network, Communities for a Better Environment, and all of you that back in June took the courageous and bold move to stand up for Richmond residents to get resources to improve the health of Richmond when you voted to place this tax measure on the ballot. And I'm proud to say I'm a supporter of this measure. And it was the leadership of your ad hoc committee, Mayor Martinez, Vice Mayor Jimenez, and Councilmember Doria Robinson, who in a very short period of time, working with your city attorney, negotiated a good deal for Richmond residents and worked to find common ground with Chevron on areas that would benefit the city. Let me turn the clock back. The previous council had negotiated a 10-year deal for about $115 million. You negotiate, a 15-year deal for $115 million. You've negotiated a 10-year deal for $550 million. Way more than that prior tax deal that just is expiring. Money that can be used to improve the health of residents, parks, libraries, public safety, emergency medical, cleaning up toxic sites, things that Richmond, streets and roads, things that Richmond residents want to see improved. And your leadership, I think, is helping make that happen. I was actually planning to record a video today with APEN to support the measure on the ballot, and instead I'm here to, as a supporter of the measure, to say this is a good deal for Richmond and appreciate your leadership to stand up. And yes, in the face of some criticism, people thought this wasn't possible, but you rose above all of that to bring here to the council something that is going to benefit Richmond and create certainty, avoid the legal risk, and allow the city to improve. So thanks for your leadership, supportive of what you've done, and always want to be a partner between the city and county together on projects and issues. So thanks.
Brian Herbinger.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Brian Hubbinger. I'm the Public and Government Affairs Manager for Chevron Richmond. I just want to start by thanking City Council members for their work on this issue and hope this lays a path forward that allows both the city and Chevron to continue to work together positively and collaboratively in the future. That is what finding common ground is all about. This agreement will allow Chevron Richmond to continue to employ thousands of Bay Area residents and remain focused on providing the affordable, reliable, and ever cleaner energy that this region demands every day, while also supplying the city with much needed additional funding to support our community's needs. The agreement will provide annual payments in addition to existing taxes the facility is already subject to. It will provide predictability that is essential to plan not only our business, but the city's budget. I'd like to express my appreciation for the labor unions of Contra Costa County, who have also seen and understand that a mutually acceptable agreement is the preferred path. And with that, I urge the City Council to vote in favor of the agreement and the resolution. Thank you.
Raleigh Butler.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Raleigh Butler, Council of Industries, I've got to say, I'm impressed. The federal government could actually learn from you. You had a contentious issue in front of you. You went through your processes, as you should. You involved the public, you had your hearings, and you took it to the ballot. But that's where you differ now from the federal government. The federal government would have degraded into a series of arguments and public battles in the news. Instead, you held yourselves open to dialogue with the main taxpayer in this, Chevron. And as a result, You've short-circuited an expensive, time-consuming process that would have taken your time and energies away from other more important issues. And you've come to a mutually beneficial settlement, right? I think that's fantastic. You've got a very strong agreement. It's very good. I'm looking forward to you being able to make improvements throughout the city with this. And I really am hoping that what you've done here permeates through the state and maybe our neighboring states. There are several contentious battles going on right now that really could be solved with just an open dialogue, which has never been had. But you had it. That sets you apart from the federal government. As I said, they could learn from you. Thank you.
Connie Choi.
Hello, my name is Connie Cho from APEN Action. The over $500 million deal presented today is a direct result of the Richmond community's power, its residents, families, and youth, building power to stand up to Chevron and organizing for a just transition today and tomorrow. At the next council meeting, the council must commit to investing in a just transition for Richmond through a formal resolution. Richmond voters deserve the opportunity to vote on this simple, deserved the opportunity to vote on this simple and transformative measure, the polluter's pay measure, that would have held Richmond's largest polluter accountable for over a century of health and climate damages, for 50 years, not just the next 10. At the end of the day, we are incredibly proud of our work to force Chevron to the table. Given the existing expiring tax settlements, which the city did not have a plan to address, this measure arrived at a critical time. What is unfortunate is that the council folded at the first whiff of litigation, despite the fact that this litigation, the pending legal matter, had nothing to do with the validity of the actual tax mechanism. And it's important for other cities and counties across California and the country to understand that. But Chevron has sown fear and foul play in Richmond for far too long. So we ask that you support the community in funding a just transition, committing, working with the community, and making sure that polluters pay.
Our next speaker is Sue Wilson. And will the following individuals please come forward? Megan Zapanta, Josh Anajar, Jose Apostita, Jamin Purcell, Sean Stahlberg, and our last in-person speaker will be Carrie Guerin. Sue Wilson.
Hi, my name is Sue Wilson. I live in the Richmond Annex, and I want to agree with most of what I've just heard other speakers say without repeating too much of it. I think this really is a testament to what we the people can do when we organize. I want to uplift, to the highest levels, everything the environmental justice community here in Richmond has done to build power on the ground and to craft what is, I agree, an amazing measure that I understand would have been amazing to have on the ballot and to have that process of organizing around it. At the end of the day, it's not that I don't trust the environmental justice movement or the power of Richmond people. I don't trust the US courts to make the right decision in the legal cases that would have inevitably come out of this measure once it passed in November. It would have passed in November. It would have been an incredible case that was built in the courts, and we still might have lost, and we still might not have ended up with any much-needed revenue for Richmond. I am fully in favor of using this money to help transfer Richmond to a just economy, a green economy, away from fossil fuels in the future. I hope that we do as a community come together after this process to build a plan for that, to use this money wisely to make a better Richmond. And I appreciate your wisdom and commitment to bring this forward. Thank you.
Megan Zapanta.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Zapanta. I am the Richmond Organizing Director for APEN Action, and I'm here today as part of the Polluters Pay Coalition. I have been organizing in Richmond for over a decade now, and I want to start by centering the community leaders that I represent, the Laotian elders who fled war to settle here and make home in Richmond, the fierce young Asian American immigrant youth and adults who you saw here at Council in May and June testifying to put this on the ballot. $550 million is an unprecedented amount of money, and none of that would be possible or be coming to Richmond without the frontline community residents who have been living day after day in the shadow of the Chevron refinery, facing the pollution, illness, and death that the refinery brings, and who have been organizing to make their neighborhoods cleaner and better and stronger. We know that our growing coalition of families, teachers, city workers, nurses, and doctors, and advocates, we know that we would have won in November, and that right now, Chevron would rather pay than see us win at the ballot box. And so I'm very, very disappointed that our community members, especially our youth who would be voting for the first time in the fall, won't have a chance to vote for this measure in November after all the work that they've done. But here we are. And so I ask you, in honor of our members and many, many community leaders like Buntang Kansuvang, Tangsun Fatama, Keo Vingbalaya, are members of ours who organized with our organization for decades before passing away and aren't here to see this vision of a just transition. I urge you to commit to funding a just transition, to funding good jobs, clean air, clean water, and a future beyond oil.
Our next speaker is Josh Anajar, followed by Jose Apostita.
Mayor, Council, Josh Anajar, Executive Director of the Contra Costa Labor Council, representing 89 unions in Contra Costa County with over 85,000 workers. You know, our movement slices all through this, right? We have skilled and trained workers and the workers represented by Steelworkers Local 5 that are inside the refineries. We want to make sure there's great services for the citizens of Richmond, and making sure that we actually fully fund our, the services people depend on. At the same exact time, so many of our members are on the outside, right outside the gates, breathing in toxic air, having to deal with the pollution impacts of this. We firmly believe that this is the right choice, that this is a way in which the city has new ways to invest in what is the future of work? What is the future to make sure that it's on the high road, to make sure that exploitation doesn't happen, and make sure that everyone can prosper with middle-class jobs? This is the way to get there. And we look forward to continuing to partner with anyone that wants to talk around what is a just transition, how do we secure it, and how do we also hold those accountable that don't meet that vision. I know this was hard, and I know this is a hard choice, and I know that many wanted to vote on this. And I just feel that with your leadership in this, you've secured ample funding for the city to provide services and also to really imagine what's next for Richmond. So thank you all for your leadership, and I urge you all to vote for the settlement agreement. Thank you.
Jose Apostita, followed by Jamin Purcell.
Good afternoon, Council. How are you doing? My name is Jose Abastida, and I'm with SCIU 10-1. I am here today to tell you, as one of the 3 founders of the Make Polluters campaign, SCIU 10-1, we were hoping to see this go to the ballot, but we do want to say that our city workers do support the settlement. We appreciate everything you have done as city council members. We understand this was a tough decision, but we do ask, would like to see a just transition plan for economic development and also for our environmental, policies that we currently have. So with that, I applaud you on the decision, but let's keep on moving and making Richmond a better city. Thank you.
Jamie Purcell, followed by Sean Stahlbaum.
Well, I hope this has really dispelled the rumor that some people like to say that this council doesn't know how to come to the table and be able to negotiate and be able to listen to the other side and be able to come to something that's going to be fruitful for the community. This was a very difficult decision because there was a lot of people involved in trying to make this issue come forward and to the people. But I want to say I do think this is the right choice because, unfortunately, a bird in a hand is better than a lawsuit. I think when we are talking about it, though, we need to make sure that the goals of the original measure still are held closely. And that is a just transition. That is investing in the frontline communities. And that's ensuring that this funding is going to go towards the staffing and infrastructure that we need here in Richmond. Money, it potentially could have been far more money, yes, if the measure had gone through. But that would only have been after a long, drawn-out legal battle. And I'm sure Chevron would have had other options of how to try and reduce their tax burden. This is guaranteed. This is something that's going to be making sure that we can invest in our infrastructure, things like our public safety building that we desperately need so we can get out of rentals. We can make sure that we have the firefighters supported. But I think that we need to also be looking at our parks. We need to make sure that we're looking at all of the places in Richmond that this money could touch and make a huge impact. I know it's difficult. It's very, very hard to be able to have to come to the table like this. But at the same time, I do hope that we make sure we don't forget the people who fought to bring this issue to the City Council and brought it to the City of Richmond, and we make sure that we are doing the best we can for them with that money. Thank you.
Sean Stahlbaum, followed by Carrie Guerin.
Good afternoon, Mayor Martinez and members of the City Council. Hello. My name is Sean Stahlbaum. I'm with IFPTE Local 21, representing the city's mid-managers and executives bargaining units. For as long as we can remember, the city's major corporations and polluters have not paid a fair share in taxes to our city to support the vital services that our members provide to the city's residents. We just want to make clear that we support the settlement agreement, and we want to congratulate Mayor Martinez and all the members of the City Council for your role, your leadership in achieving an unprecedented tax settlement agreement with Chevron. For the first time in our history, Chevron will finally be required to pay a fairer share to our city to support the important services that are provided to residents. Also, we know that this historic tax settlement would not have been possible were it not for Mayor Martinez, for the entire council, and for your leadership in voting to place the Make Polluters Pay measure on the upcoming election ballot, as well as for the work of all of Richmond's community partners and allies in the environmental justice movement, including APEN, CBE, and so many others who stepped up and helped get this initiative to the ballot. The settlement payments from Chevron over the next 10 years will help shore up the city's budget and potentially fund additional programs like street maintenance, parks, creating new youth jobs, expanding violence prevention programs, yes, creating new green jobs and a just transition, which our members wholeheartedly support, and enhancing solutions for homelessness. Today, we are proud to be city workers, and we applaud your leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last in-person speaker is Carrie Guerin.
Carrie Guerin, she, her, Richmond staff attorney with Communities for a Better Environment Action. Our campaign is historic. the Polluters Pay ballot measure offers to write the next chapter of Richmond's history, where we put people over profits and community over corporations, with $4 billion over 50 years. I urge you to reject this tax deal so that the community's voice can be heard, so that Richmond may be an example for all fence line communities, and so that big polluters are truly held accountable. This campaign is personal. I think of one of my best friends who lives in the Iron Triangle, where you can see the refinery from her front porch. I wonder and worry about the health and safety of the children she wants to have one day. I think of my dear friend's 10-year-old son who has battled and beat cancer twice here in Richmond. I think of the elders departed too soon after lifetimes of industrial pollution exposure. We must do better for Richmond. When our community members dreamt up this vision, it focused on a public campaign that empowered residents, building capacity in every neighborhood, mobilizing people power, and giving the voters a voice. Our campaign did not approach the city with this concept just so that Chevron would cut a deal that is pennies to them. I did not write this ballot measure and tax ordinance so that the city could settle. If there is any victory today, it is because of the community. If there has been any leadership, it is by the community. And so, here we are. If the council approves the tax deal, the council must establish a community oversight board to allocate the funds and reserve the use of funds to advance a just transition for Richmond. We will be there every step of the way to support that process and look forward to future collaborations.
That was our last in-person speaker. Now we'll move to the online speakers. We have a total of 11 speakers right now.
And those speakers are Elsa Stevens, Shauna, Sylvia Arredondo, Ben Terrio, Jane Corrant, Lazuli, Tarnell Abbott, Maritime Johannesson, Rita Baruch, Analu Wapo, and Hilmia Houston. Elsa, please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Up until a few minutes ago, I was going to be very insulted, indignant about this process. This fall, people will go out of their way to vote in the first African-American female president. Those people would vote for Make Polluters Pay. But even if we win, because of Trump-appointed judges, Make Polluters Pay could end up by way of Roe versus Wade. So grab the money now, go ahead and do it. I'm terribly disappointed, but I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Shauna. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Shauna Lazaro. I am the co-legal director at Communities for a Better Environment. Through the Polluters Pay campaign, the Richmond community members have been working for years to build the power that brought us here today. Any benefits from this $550 million is a direct result of residents, of families, and of youth organizing for a just transition. When I started at CBE in 2005, we were already organizing in Richmond, and we were already talking with members about their vision of a path to phasing down refining at Chevron while building up this community's social, economic, and environmental goods. Around the country and around the world, we have seen what happens when oil companies stop refining and when they leave behind their toxic legacy without cleanup plans and money to fund those cleanup plans and community engagement to make sure that those plans take care of the community, take care of the land. Our measure isn't going to the ballot, which makes it absolutely vital that this council commit to ensuring that when Chevron leaves, our families are not left with the cleanup cost. At the next council meeting, I'm urging you to commit to invest in a just transition for Richmond. We need a commitment from you to start to prepare today for the refinery transition and cleanup. Because as I said, we have seen what happens when corporations declare bankruptcy and walk away from their toxic mess. We've seen it in other cities and we've seen it here in Richmond. Chevron is a $21.4 billion corporation. It can afford to pay this tax, and it can afford to pay much, much more. This is only 12.5% of the $4 billion the ballot measure offered. We know they can afford more. I've only been here in Richmond
Time has
for
expired.
2 decades.
The next speaker is Sylvia Arredondo. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Arredondo. I'm the Civic Engagement Director with CBE Action and the Polluters Pay campaign. Although I'm not a Richmond resident, I have grown up in a refinery community here in Los Angeles, surrounded by 5 refineries my entire life. The potential of the Polluters Pay measure and working alongside my Richmond colleagues has proven to be a beacon of hope of what is possible for refinery communities from Richmond to Los Angeles. The grassroots leaders, our working families, the youth, our elders, our teachers, healthcare providers, and first responders who know what it's like to live day in and day out with daily pollution and health harms. We're so righteous in this fight to ensure a future beyond fossil fuel operations and move us towards a more equitable and sustainable future where our families can thrive without the threat and dangers of big oil polluting and corrupting not only our health, but our politics. And so although this is a historic amount of money, the reality is that the Polluters Pay measure isn't going to the ballot. It's depriving our voters of the opportunity to hold Chevron accountable and pay their fair share on the terms of the people and the will of our voters. And so it's a real missed opportunity to ensure that the folks who have been the frontline leaders in Richmond who have been driving these demands will not have that opportunity. And so I want to end with saying that if the council approves this tax deal, they must establish a community oversight board in how they allocate these funds, as well as reserving the use of funds to advance a just transition for Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ben Terrio. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Hello, Council. Ben Terrio, President of the Richmond Police Officers Association. Again, proud to stand with all of labor, and also proud of the City Council to do the right decision to ensure that the folks that live in Richmond and that the workers who provide vital services will be able to work in tandem with Chevron and have a solid financial footing within the city. I think it says a lot on the pragmatic approach on folks. And, there are some who I think are not happy with this deal on many sides of the spectrum. But at the end of the day, that's the lens that you guys have to look through. I think you look through that prism correctly. And I'm glad Chevron did as well, and that something was able to reach because I guess several people have used the bird in the hand, and they're correct. It's better to have something and to move forward on a different pathway than to wait and worry. So again, I salute your guys' decision to pass this and to make this arrangement, and I think it's good for all the workers involved and long term for the residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jane Corrant. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Good afternoon. I am a 10-year resident of Richmond, and one of the first things that I did when I moved here from Oakland was to join the Richmond Progressive Alliance, one of many, and you've heard about them in more detail here, wonderful community groups that are working for a healthier and stronger and better Richmond, for environmental justice. And I am proud of this decision, although I know it was a difficult one. And I know that many of us were really eager to be able to cast our votes for the measure. I applaud the mayor. I applaud council members Claudia Jimenez, Doria Robinson for getting the ball rolling on this as a result of the community that they are responding to so responsibly. Again, this is an indication, as we heard before, of the power of the courts and the conservative move of the courts, that they have the kind of power that we all have to face long litigation when we are working for just communities. So thank you for coming up with this compromise. And I also want to second the comment of Jamin Purcell that that is a myth, that this council cannot compromise. And it is a myth that the Richmond Progressive Alliance does not support people who are sitting on this council and who have worked tirelessly over the years, for much longer than I've lived in this city, to make this city a better place for everyone. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lazuli. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Hello, I am Lasule with the Polluter Pay Campaign and CBE Action, as well as a longtime Richmond community member. I am here to express my deep disappointment and feelings of betrayal that the City Council has decided to settle and strip our community from their right to vote on this ballot measure in November. I urge you to reconsider this decision. A 10-year settlement is nowhere near the win of securing funding for our communities for 50 years. We need to think about future solutions, not just the next 10 years. I am deeply disappointed because despite years of community organizing and standing firm in our values that community comes first, you all have fallen to the fear-mongering tactics Chevron has spewed. It is so disappointing to see another tax measure fail when we have the prime opportunity to win and hold big polluters accountable. However, our community will continue to fight, will continue to build people power, regardless if our city council backs us up. This is something community has been dreaming of for years and was truly a step towards the just transition that Richmond deserves. I ask that our city council follows through on their promises and allots money towards funding a cleaner and better environment in Richmond through a just transition. And to Chevron, just know that this is not the last time you will hear from us. That's it.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tarnell Abbott. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Tarnell Abbott. I am a very long-term resident. I've been very much of an activist, both with the Richmond Progressive Alliance and with my union, SEIU. And I find myself very conflicted about this attempt to overturn a strong vote that was given to put it on the ballot. I think that this compromise is splitting the community, and I hate to see that. The initial ballot proposal was supported by all segments except for the Chevron and Council of Industries segment. And I don't think you should go for the compromise. I think you need to stand strong, fight the fight. 10 years of short-term payoff is not in the best interests of future generations. It is not in the best interests of us to sell short a future for a lesser win today. And I hope that you will seriously listen to what your community members were saying, especially the CBE Action and the APEN Action folks who have been on this from the get-go, and listen to your community members who spoke so well and begged you to put this measure on the ballot. Stand strong and don't be afraid of the lawsuits. They're always going to say that they're going to take you to court. Guess what? They don't always win. And you have to be, when you go in to negotiate, you go in on a strong foot, and you did a good job trying to get a really good deal. You did get a good deal. I think everybody can acknowledge that. And I just hope that you can stand stronger and say, we're still going to go and let people vote for this measure.
Your time has expired. Thank you. The next speaker is Maritime Johannesson. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Hi, my name is Martine, and I'm with the Polluters Pay Campaign and CBE Action. I'll echo what others have already mentioned by saying that these $550 million are entirely thanks to the organizing of a really strong coalition of Richmond residents, families, and workers. I want to especially recognize SEIU 1021 members and the workers of United Teachers of Richmond, the people who keep this city running and provide essential services, the people who see their students get sick day after day, witness flares, and have been organizing to bring this measure forward. We cannot forget that the settlement deal is a small fraction of the total funds that would have been raised by the proposed tax measure, a measure we know would have passed with tremendous support from residents in November. But now we need City Council to establish a refinery transition fund to support a future for Richmond beyond big oil, a future that centers the health and economic and social well-being of Richmond residents. Richmond voters deserve the opportunity to vote on their own future this November and hold Chevron accountable. But if City Council approves the tax deal, we ask that the Council establish a community oversight board to allocate these settlement funds and reserve the use of the funds to advance a just transition for Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rita Baruch. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, esteemed mayor and council members. My name is Rita Baruch. I am Richmond resident since 2000 and an active SEIU 1021 COPE member. I'm also someone who worked as public health medical social worker with Richmond Children and Families for 23 years and have witnessed continually the impacts on the health of our residents due to the Chevron refinery. I'm really hearing and struggling with the comments that people are making. I do think that this so clearly is a testament to not just the strength of the community organizations, but this effective city council. I really thank Mayor Martinez and my representative Claudia Jimenez and Doria Robinson for the strong negotiations. Chevron is a formidable opponent, and I do think that it's wise to accept this deal and compromise, understanding that it's not all that we deserve and need to address the many, many decades of impacts to our city. But I also noticed in reading the statements, what this decision would mean, that it doesn't preclude going back to request and assess other taxes on Chevron in the future. And I think that's really important. It's secure this now, but it's we have to go farther. And that we're watched. The actions here, the relationship with Chevron is watched across the country and across the world. And
time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Ana Luwapo Olabo. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Hi, my name is Anu. When the tax to tax polluters came out, It made me happy that everyone gets to have their voices heard by being able to vote. I understand this situation may have been hard for the city council members to accept, but I won't lie and say I'm not disappointed that the city fell under the pressure, and now the people of Richmond won't be able to let their voices out during voting. Now, as a community, we would have to continue fighting for our community for cleaner air and safer environment. I have a question though, and hope I have an answer to this later. What would happen after 10 years? What I think is Chevron would most likely play dirty by then. So, as a community, we still want to see a future without Chevron and do hope the council members are able to still continue fighting for a healthier community and a future post Chevron. I hope this settlement is able to continue making Richmond a better place and pushing for a healthier environment for all. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker is Halima Houston. Please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Halima. I'm with Communities for a Better Environment. And I have to also say that this is disappointing because many of my peers that would be voting on that ballot for something so powerful for the community, now we see that being stripped away. And I think that our community voices still deserve to be heard. And I get that this is a hard decision, like many people have echoed, but I think that our community deserves more than 10 years, especially considering the work and the risks that many of our Richmond orgs and members had to take, and the harm that Chevron has done. Chevron's done more than 10 years worth of damage, and this just feels like a play to shut our voices down and weaken our drive to fight against Chevron. But we will continue to push to get the shady and greedy corpse of Chevron out of Richmond. So thank you.
Thank you. And that was our last speaker.
Thank you. With that, the public comment is closed. We will now go to comments from the council, and we'll begin with Councilmember McLaughlin.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to all the speakers eloquently bringing forward your comments. Although I will be supporting this settlement. Is there an echo that we can get rid of? Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although I will be supporting this settlement, I want to focus my comments on the environmental justice groups who spent a number of years putting this ballot measure together. It is the strength of their tax measure that brought us to where we are at today. Chevron came to the table because of their efforts. The EJ groups spent years researching this and putting their time and energy and resources to get us to this point. Not only did community lawyers write the ballot measure, but they raised funds to have other lawyers review it. They also fundraised and began running a campaign. Many of us have seen some of the Make Polluters Pay ads that are already running. So it is their dedicated work that has brought us to this point today. It is also the work of the community for decades prior to this, where I had the privilege of working side by side with community members, making it clear that we can stand up to Chevron and regulate them in terms of their pollution, their taxes, and their harm to the community. And from previous ballot measures where the voters weighed in positively to tax Chevron further. I also want to say that it's important for other cities and counties in California and across the country to know that this tax deal occurred at the same time as a lawsuit, but that lawsuit had nothing to do with the legality or validity of the actual tax mechanism itself. And its ability to go onto the ballot was never in question. It was just about some of the examples used on the label. This ballot measure tax initiative was designed really well, thanks to the community groups and many academics and lawyers who helped make this the best tax to stand up in court given that everyone knew that Chevron was going to sue. It gave us a lot of leverage to cut the deal today. I lament the fact that our community will not be able, if this is passed, to vote on this initiative, this ballot initiative, since a community vote would have been really empowering for the community, and I fully believe that the ballot measure would have won, and we could have won a lawsuit and even settled with Chevron later in time. It's clear that settlement in a lawsuit doesn't actually require any faith in the courts, because you can always cut a deal right after the lawsuit is filed, before the litigation even really gets going. But we've decided to take a different path here and secure a short-term win right now, which will allow us to begin serving the community earlier. Although the settlement is less than the ballot measure would have brought in, considerably less, it is still a significant and meaningful amount of money. So I thank everyone who contributed to getting us this far. I primarily attribute the success of this settlement to the environmental justice groups, CBE and APEN, their members, and the grassroots movement they have been building for years. They have won in the courts on a host of environmental justice issues in the past, including enrichment issues. And I know they will keep working to build the movement and to come up with valuable initiatives for cities and communities everywhere. So I'm glad our city will have more services, more resources to serve our community thanks to this settlement, and I'm glad that our environmental justice movement led the way to get us here today. And just as an FYI, I will be bringing a resolution to the council on September 10th, which will be our next meeting, to allocate some funding for a just transition that the EJ groups have been working on. So I look forward to doing that and to collaborating with the environmental justice groups who have done so much for Richmond so far and will continue to do more as we go forward. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo the comments of Councilmember McLaughlin. I know and I have been just a part of the grassroots movement to make polluters pay, to hold bad business and bad corporations accountable, to bring more resources into our community and to empower our community. If it wasn't for the actions and efforts of CBE, APEN, the Make Polluters Pay campaign, and all the residents that got involved, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, more than likely. I am a big supporter of the refinery tax. I've been saying this entire time that it's time for the rest of the Richmond community to decide what they want refineries to contribute to this community. Also sitting here as a council member and a lifelong Richmond resident, working within our cities, our workforce, our labor unions, and still door knocking our communities, there's a lot of needs. There's a lot of needs right now. There's a lot of needs that have needed to be dealt with for decades that we haven't been able to address because we're always so stretched thin on resources, or when we are doing something right for the community, we are in a lot of fights tied up in litigation. And because of the significance and historic impact of the settlement that was negotiated by the ad hoc committee, thank you, I think it is important that Richmond has a break and focus on rebuilding with guaranteed additional resources. And I'm also committed into having an advisory board. I want community members to be a part of our budgeting process. And I'm also looking towards the next 10 years after this settlement because we need long-term sustainability. City Clerk, can you say my time has expired? Thank you. Yeah.
Your time has expired.
Okay.
Next speaker.
Yes. And the next speaker is Vice Mayor Claudia Jimenez.
Yeah, thank you. I had some comments, but before my comments, I have a question for Chevron. And it's about the language. One of the issues that is important to the city is that the agreement does not terminate if the refinery is sold to a third party. Under the tax ballot measure, the tax will continue to be collected even if the refinery is sold. When we want to make sure that this agreement provides us the same benefit as the tax measure. I appreciate that Chevron removed the provisions early in the earlier draft, which stated that the agreement terminates if the refinery is sold to a third party. I want you, Chevron, to confirm on the record today that your interpretation of the agreement is that if the refinery is sold to a third party, the agreement is not terminated but remains in effect, and Chevron continues to make the payments as provided under the agreement. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Tolly Graves, the director at the refinery, and I confirm that that is my understanding of the agreement as well.
Okay, you are on record. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
I am going to just say my comments. When I look at this tax settlement agreement, I think this is what the people can do when we organize. To get here today, many things had happened first. For decades, environmental activists, both individual people and local organizations, had been making the case that, number one, Richmond is polluted. Second, is the corporations that are doing it. And third, we, the people, can do something to fix that. The amazing people of Richmond have taken all parts of that message to heart. We, all of us who live here, are some of the strongest environmental activists in the world. And this week, we use our power to make Chevron pay. You might wonder, why did we focus on taxing Chevron? In 2021, Communities for a Better Environment, CBE, and the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, APEN, began the work to document the community's vision for a just transition to a more healthy and equitable Richmond. The list of ideas the community members made was long and impressive, but that raised another important question. Who should pay to make this improvement happen? The Make Polluters Pay measure that the mayor and I placed on the agenda in June, which was approved unanimously by the City Council, was written to shift the cost of restoring Richmond's environmental health to Chevron, where it belongs. The Make Polluters Pay measure and the negotiations this week were about getting more money for the city by making Chevron pay taxes. And on that matter, we had reached an agreement that I believe is a good one and worth voting for. But let me be clear. We are not settling with Chevron over the issue of pollution. The fight goes on. This city council will continue to do everything in his power to continue to hold Chevron accountable for pollution and force them to meet existing air standards. There is nothing in today's agreement that stops us from doing that. That fight with Chevron will go on, probably until the day we start refining fossil fuel and make a just transition to a green economy. As part of this agreement, the City Council will agree to remove the Make Polluters Pay refinery tax measure from the November ballot and accept the $550 million payment from Chevron instead. I know there are mixed feelings about removing the measure. It is a great measure. While I am confident that Richmond Board will have approved it, and I will have truly enjoyed campaigning in favor of it, I was worried that the U.S. court system will eventually take Chevron's side instead of ours in the legal battle over the tax. The risk, cost, and delay that come with legal cases should be avoided when you can. I am proud to have sat alongside with Council Member Doria Robinson and Mayor Eduardo Martinez on the ad hoc committee that negotiated most of the terms of this settlement. or committed bargain with Chevron until they raised their initial offer to $300 million to the final offer of $550 million, and agree with us that all decisions about spending will be made by the City Council alone. It held that all three of us are excellent negotiators. But what really made Chevron raise its offer is knowing that all of you Richmond voters will have tax then in November. Everyone who stood up for the May polluters pay measure gave us the power in negotiations. I have gratitude for our team. Throughout this process, I have enjoyed working along city leaders that had the wisdom and political courage to unanimously approve both the original measure to tax Chevron, and I hope the settlement we have in front of us today. We were aided by the expertise of city staff in bringing this deal to life in a short time frame. I also want to thank Communities for a Better Environment, CBE, and the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, APEN, their sister organizations, CBE Action and APEN Action, and the many academics and outside counsel that helped us develop the ideas that went into the measure. We thank those who made phone calls and knocked doors to build support for it. We will not be here without this broad base of support. We are proud of the decades of deep community organizing in Richmond that was able to hold our biggest polluter accountable and make polluters pay. So what happens now? By entering into this agreement, the city is guaranteed $500 million in funds that will allow us to protect and grow essential services, fund initiatives to help Richmond transition to a green economy, and set aside money for the day that Chevron's refinery stops operating and leaves a hole in the city's revenue base. We are absolutely committed to ensuring that these funds are used both to meet immediate needs and to invest in a just transition away from fossil fuel refinery communities. We will continue to fight to make polluters pay so we don't have to. Thank you.
Councilmember Cepeda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to ask a quick question to our attorney. I'm not sure which attorney is on, other than the one that's here. Is Michael on?
Dave's on. Dave and Michael are both on.
Dave and Michael. So Michael, maybe you might be able to answer this, or be able to share a little bit more about the Bradley Burns Act, because that was in the letter that you provided, and I think it's important for people to understand what that is, because that I think played a little bit in the role here as well. So can you share what Bradley Burns is, the Bradley Burns Act?
Sure. When you pay a sales tax in California, you're actually paying 3 or 4 different sales taxes. There's one to the state, there's one to the city or the county in which the sale takes place, and there's some that go to regional transportation agencies, and some local governments have an additional tax called a transaction and use tax. All of these taxes are coordinated into one system where you pay one tax at the point of sale, and it's collected by the retailer and paid to the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. A provision of the Bradley Burns Uniform State and Local Sales and Use Tax Law is a requirement that cities adopt the tax in exactly the form the state has provided, so that the CDTFA, the Tax and Fee Administration, has one common set of rules to apply statewide. If you adopt a use tax or a sales tax that differs from that model ordinance, CDTFA will not collect it for you, and they might refuse to collect your other taxes. A use tax in this context means a tax paid one time when you purchase something from a seller who's not subject to tax. That used to mean out-of-state sellers, like if you buy a car in Reno and drive it back home, and to internet resellers. These days, most but not all internet resellers collect sales tax. But there are still out-of-state purchases and some interstate purchases where sales tax is not collected. On those transactions, a use tax applies in order to make sure there's no incentive to buy your car in Reno rather than in California, to make a level playing field for California's retailers. In our previous fights with Chevron, Chevron persuaded a trial court that the Measure U tax, which was a tax on utility use, was a use tax. I think that argument is wrong. It relies only on the fact that we're using the word use twice. But that doesn't make the use tax within the sales and use tax law a tax on any other form of use of property to engage in economic activity. Because if it did, then every business license tax, which taxes business activity, would be a prescribed, a preempted use tax. So Chevron maintains its view that the tax that we're talking about taking off the ballot today is vulnerable to challenge as a use tax. We say, phooey, you're wrong. You persuaded a trial court on that. We didn't get a chance to get that fixed in the Court of Appeal. We understand your position, but we don't agree with it.
Thank you. So if that would have gone to court and the court would have ruled against us, what would have that done to, or if it would have passed?
Conceivably, you'd lose all of your sales tax revenues. They might flow to the county instead.
So the sales tax would have gone to the county instead to Richmond?
Right. Because their tax would be legal, yours would be illegal, therefore all the tax would go to them. That's Chevron's position. And yes, there's some risk that a trial court might agree with that position, as happened once before.
Okay. And I believe that I saw in there that we're getting about $50 or $60 million for that tax, so that would have just left Richmond and gone to the county?
It would either gone away or more likely gone to the county.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. So that there kind of just train of thought is one of the reasons why I think that there was a lot of unknowns if this was to be moving forward. But I do want to thank CBE and APEN and all the community that came out to speak and that got us to vote for the measures we put up a couple of months ago. So thank you for that. And I agree with my colleagues in that we have to use some of this money, if not all of it, for a just transition and making sure, because that's what we went out there for. And that everything that we put on the ballot, that we stand behind it. That we do for just transition, that we fix our roads, that we fix our parks, that we make sure that we upgrade our fire departments, that we build our public safety building, and that we continue having a great Richmond. This is a lot of money that's going to be coming in, and potentially we have a really great opportunity to really, really uplift Richmond. All of our streets, our infrastructure, it's the opportunity to be able to upgrade. It's the opportunity to be able to get rid of some of that OPEB liability that we have and really start changing the future councils and the future of Richmond so that we don't have so much liability, we don't have so much old infrastructure. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank my colleagues who worked through this. I want to thank everyone who came to the table. Excuse me. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to being able to vote, and I look forward to being able to continue to work together, not just on this, but on future items. So thank you, everyone.
Councilmember Robinson.
Thank you. I want to start off by just making it clear and reading a short statement, and then I have some comments. I really want to reiterate that I am absolutely proud of the decades of deep community organizing in Richmond to hold our biggest polluter accountable and to make polluters pay. I thank Communities for a Better Environment, the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, and their sister organizations, CBE Action, APEN Action, and all the many academics and outside councils that researched and wrote the measure. We thank those who made phone calls, who knocked on doors, and more to build support for this ballot measure. We would not be here without this broad base of support. And I'm gonna say that again. This settlement would absolutely, absolutely not happen, period, without all of the years of work, about all of the work that Carrie did to bring this forward. We would not be here. With all due respect to Chevron, I am actually happy we're able to figure something out together, but you would not have offered your fair share without their work. You just wouldn't have. You haven't in 100 years, and you wouldn't have without that push. So I thank these organizations. We are absolutely committed to ensuring that these funds are used to meet both immediate needs and to invest in just transition away from extractive, polluting fossil fuel economy. I absolutely support a resolution that I'm yet to see, but hope to see soon, coming forward to create a just transition fund. I think if Detroit had thought about that before the collapse of the auto industry, they would have been in a much, much better position, especially if they could have negotiated something with their auto manufacturers to make sure that that was funded. I'm also absolutely in support in creating some kind of a community of oversight committee over those funds so that we have some participatory budgeting around how the funds are used. From where I stand, after being a lifetime Richmond resident who grew up in the Iron Triangle, literally also looking at the refinery from my bedroom window growing up, seeing many, many members of my church community die from cancer, and almost every kid that I know having asthma, I'm absolutely have been a lifetime activist when it comes to the impacts of extractive industry in this community, and I will continue to be. And I know that climate change is happening now. We are already too late. We are already too late. We're already doing too little. We need to start to work through just transition now. Not in 10 years, not in 7 years. We need to make those investments now. We are already too late. When I looked at this whole issue, this whole problem, and realized that I absolutely believe this ballot measure would win. Absolutely, it would win. The voters would vote it up. And then I also absolutely believe that it's in Chevron's interest and it's in Chevron's history that they would do every single thing they could with their legion of lawyers to keep it in the courts for decades, not decades, but at least years. That has actually been the history. That's what Carson is going through right now. They passed their measure in 2017. 7 years later, they haven't seen a dime of that money. Not a dime. All locked up. And not only is it all locked up, but they're spending $1 million a year to fight the fight in hopes that in the end, maybe it'll work in their favor. I am not heartened by what's been happening in the courts, especially on the upper levels in terms of judgments going, in my opinion, in blasphemous ways when it comes to protecting our environment. I am not heartened in the feeling, and even in Contra Costa County and Martinez, you know, the pro-corporate kind of atmosphere that our courts have. I'm not heartened. I'm just not. You know, if this was a measure that was focusing on a fight where we were fighting around the kind of pollution that was going into our air, I would be in it to the bitter end because it's about the point. But this has always been about money, about paying their fair share. I think that $500 million for this community is something that this community needs, especially in my district and in places where you have the lowest income residents, have the worst parks, the worst streets, the worst conditions. They have been waiting for 100 years to improve services, to get more support. To have $500 million in front of us and then to say no when there is so much need is just not something I can do. I can't, I live in this community. I live on these blocks. I see people in my grandparents' church and in the schools, my neighbors, and they all, when I talk to them, they're like, take the deal, we need it. I'm accountable to the people of Richmond, to the people who actually suck in these fumes every day, including myself. I live here too. And I feel like we need to put this money to work now. And we need to be moving towards this just transition now. There's so much to be done. There's so much to be done. I also feel like there's a real error in our thinking to think that fostering a 50-year dependence on the economic, produce of an exploitive industry, that there's something wrong in that thinking. That we want to have this engagement for 50 years in something that we're hoping to transition. There's something wrong in our thinking. That said, there's nothing at all prohibiting us at the end of this 10-year agreement to seeing where we stand at that moment and seeing if we need to make sure that Chevron continues to pay its fair share. But I would like to push towards not fostering a long-term dependence on something that has been killing us for years. I really, really, really want to thank the ad hoc committee. This was really stressful and really long, and many of us wanted to see this go to the ballot, and it was a hard move personally to move to the point where we ended up on. We had many, many moments where we were standing strong in the face of people who were saying, take the earlier deal, take the earlier deal, take the earlier deal. And we stood strong and we said no. And there's so much pressure, so much pressure. I also just really want to thank the mayor, because many times in those moments of pressure, he took an extremely courageous stance. Extremely courageous stance. I'm also thanking the council, just willingness, ultimately willingness to trust our leadership as an ad hoc committee on this. I think that just in closing, I want to say that we have a lot of work in front of us. This is not a Richmond problem. This is a world problem. How do we move from where we are to where we need to be when it comes to the things that are driving climate change, when it comes to our economic dependence on those systems? We have a lot of work to do. We need to do it together. That means everyone together. That means our fighters, the people who are out there doing that hard work. We need you in this fight to continue moving us through just transition to our ultimate goal. And we also need industry to understand that you are a part of this solution, and that means you have to step up, and you shouldn't always have to be pushed to that point, forced to that point, threatened to that point. Being a good corporate citizen and a good corporate neighbor means you come to the table on your own. So on that note, I'm proud of our work. It's not exactly what we all wanted, but I think that it can do an enormous amount of good for this city. And it's up to us to hold ourselves accountable to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Councilmember Baru.
Thank you. I start with the good news. I'm going to be very brief.
Thank you.
So I would like to thank Carrie, Sandy, CBE, APEN, Make Polluters Pay, all the activists and advocates and community-based organizations who worked so hard on this. Today is a historic day It's a great day. We're here not just to pass a resolution, but also to celebrate. Not celebrate receiving the big money, which we do, of course, but more importantly, I think we're here to celebrate the fact that those community organizations have made such a strong movement that have brought us to this point. Today's significance is not just about avoiding litigation and big numbers. It's also about Chevron acknowledging its corporate responsibility, acknowledging the law is on our side and we can have this agreement. And I'm very glad we're having this agreement, actually. There has been so much distrust between the city and Chevron, and I'm thankful to our mayor for taking that leap and sitting at the table, negotiating with Chevron, having a direct, meaningful conversation, and getting to this point. They both gave each other a chance. And on this side, it's also good to see that now Chevron believes in Richmond, to see collaboration and to see shared vision for a better Richmond. I'm very excited, actually, about the City Council's commitment to work with all community-based organizations and environmental groups towards environmental justice, just transition, social equity. And honestly, when I was running for the council, many people asked me, are you sure you want to run for the city council? It's going to be rough. It hasn't been a smooth ride, but honestly, I'm very happy to be here. With these colleagues at the city council, these are good times for the city of Richmond. So I'm very glad to be here, and I can't wait to discuss the budget for the next year. Thank you all, my colleagues, and especially the ad hoc committee and all the activists in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess that leaves me with the final comments. I want to say that this is a historic moment, and when we look at history books, generally there's names of people that pop up, but in this instance, the names that should pop up are the names of the communities. It should be the APN, it should be CBE, it should be the community in general that has made this possible. And this is a fight that will continue, not only in how we designate the uses of the money, but in terms of other organizations like BACMed, which needs to make sure that Chevron continues to operate their facilities in a reasonable, safe manner. I say this is a historic moment because we, and when I say we, I mean the community of Richmond, has created a movement that will echo across the nation. What's happened here has demonstrated to the community, to the nation, to the world, that when we as people pull together, we can create change. And that by standing up for environmental justice, just as we have, other communities too can require that their polluters do the right thing, either by measure or by negotiation. So this is just the beginning. It was difficult getting Chevron to reach this agreement. And last night, when I saw the signs, "We believe in Richmond," I did make the statement or ask the question, how much do you believe in Richmond? And we hope that this belief in Richmond isn't something that we have to pull from you, but something that you bring out because you truly do believe in Richmond and the worth of the community and the safety of the community and the health of the community and of the environment. So I think it's time to have a motion made.
Made the motion, Mayor.
All right. Then I move that we adopt a resolution rescinding resolution number 6324 and would remove from the November 5th, 2024 ballot a proposed business license tax on oil refining and adopt a resolution approving a settlement agreement. That's a tax agreement resolution with Chevron Corporation. So,
Second that motion.
Ready?
yes.
Councilmember Bonner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jimenez,
Yes.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
Councilmember Zepeda,
Yes.
and Mayor Martinez.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous.
Well, with that, we are adjourning. Thanks to everyone who has come. Thank you.
Oh.
Hey, Shannon,
It's over, J. Moore.
Shannon.